So we looked at the problem and we said, yeah, this is about $150,000, $200,000 problem. $500,000 business looks at a $200,000 problem and is like, that's half my yearly salary. But he was so forward thinking, he said, sure, let's do that. He's now doing $850,000 of revenue with less than $200,000 of cost.
Since this is the start of this series, maybe tell those people who don't know you and 923 a little bit about why they should care about what we're doing here.
So we've been in AI since 2016. Our first products were predicting house sales in the United States. We also worked on a baby monitor camera for a company called Durrell. At the time, shockingly, in 2016, which feels like it wasn't that long ago, there wasn't baby monitors sitting above cribs that were completely wireless, tied to the internet or to the cloud. They were all these little handheld devices. And so we were first to market with a baby monitor that was wireless. It also had an audio device connected to it as well. We sold 10,000 of them in stores, and we started tracking the baby's heart rate through the monitor itself and trying to figure out when the baby was going to wake up and how the mother was going to deal with that. And so that was our first ML project, right? We're doing predictability. We're trying to figure out how things act based on anomalies and instances. So we had to start hiring engineers and PhD students and try to get into this world of AI and ML. And so 50% of our business was still doing mobile apps. That's still the hot rage. And all the way till 2021, basically, mobile apps were still like very, very hard to build correctly. And so top agencies were still trying to figure out how to balance professionalism with speed, and it became a commodity, right? Mobile apps over time, it just became this wrapped commodity that websites didn't need anymore. And so by 21, 22, at the same time ChatGPT was coming out, we started playing with the large language models, and we actually released the product for a mental health patient of ours that was doing $100 million in Series D, I think they were in, and they wanted a chatbot to replace their human, they wanted to direct clients or customers that were coming to their mental health website and determine what they were asking for. They weren't doing the actual therapy, but they were trying to figure out what is the actual reason that they were coming to this website. And so we created a GPT on this website called OpenAI. There was no ChatGPT at the time, but we created this concept of routing patients, or not patients, but customers to the right resource. And then ChatGPT came out and everything changed, right? We had already had a project in the space. We already had ML experience. We already had AI experience. And so just falling into that consultancy of how do you go about teaching the humans how to use AI was just very natural for us. I have a supply chain background, our co-founder Pavel, but he worked at Intel. So we had this innate experience about the theory of constraints, of bottlenecks, of how to push product from the beginning origins of what something is in an idea and how to get it out to market, but then also how to go into a business and truly understand where are the problems actually lying that are holding more revenue or least amount of cost from happening in that business. And so from our experience, I've been in business now for 20 years of looking at hundreds and hundreds of businesses. And those are just the ones we've won, never mind the fact that we've sent out 400 proposals of companies that we didn't win, but we had to do a lot of investigation into. We've seen a lot, and we've seen a lot of places that can be helped and a lot of places that when you help, it doesn't increase the revenue. And so by combining all of that experience together and all of that knowledge and great engineers and elite product managers, we truly have created a place that people not only love to work, but our clients love asking us to solve problems for them.
From my experience only being here 1 year, one of the things I take away from that is the theory, just enough theory to be very practical, but then the actual experience of implementation. And I think there's a scale of someone building a N8N workflow that just goes right into execution versus McKinsey or a consulting firm that is almost 100% theory. And I see 923 in that sweet spot of we have all the tools we need to execute for you and PhD level engineers, but we also have the certified product managers who can just talk theory and understand what AI solution is going to be the best use case for you.
Yeah, your anniversary is this week, right? You'll be exactly 1 year. The theory aspect of AI is not about how is it going to work and what is the results going to be. And if you focus on that, which you see on Twitter and any social media network that is touting AI, they focus on the results that AI can bring to the company. 90% of the work is dealing with the humans. And using the technology to interact with the humans is still incredibly valuable. You're dealing with, no matter what Sam Altman says, you're dealing with a low-level employee that has the knowledge of the entire company. We've all worked with that person that comes in at 22 years old and thinks they know it all and makes a lot of mistakes and also can get a lot done, right? So you're weighing the fact that you have a 24/7 employee that has the knowledge of the entire company, but doesn't truly know how to use it or operate it correctly. Our job and why the consultancy is so important is that not only can we direct the companies in the right direction, we can understand the actual theory behind it of what's going to happen once you deploy it. How are the humans going to react? How is the revenue going to increase? What is the return on investment actually going to be? So at the beginning of the project, we write down the KPI. In one project we're proposing right now, we're trying to get call times from 4 minutes down to 2 minutes. That doesn't fire a single person. It doesn't remove a person from the company. It doesn't change the structure of that company. It allows them to take more phone calls per day. And if they can do that in a competitive landscape where there's 20 or 30 companies in that state doing the same exact service, more calls per day equals more revenue with the same resources. And that is the type of services that AI can provide. But most importantly, the employees that are taking those calls and scheduling those trucks and putting out the actual work to get the information from their brain or their phone call into the system is their least favorite part of the day. They love talking to clients. They love scheduling clients and making them happy. So why not do more of that and less of the paperwork and less of the mundane work? And if you focus on the theory of that with the product managers, and the product managers can focus on reducing that and talking to those employees and saying, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to click 45 buttons for an hour every time you get off the phone call and you just went to your next phone call? That's what you hired them for to begin with. So that's the stuff that enterprise businesses that are using AI correctly are doing and then not talking about because they're seeing it work so well. They don't have time to tweet about it or go on LinkedIn and say how great it is. They have time to think, what is the next part of my business that this magical wand that I just installed over here can be implemented in the next part? So that's the fun stuff.
That's awesome. I want to dig in a little bit more there before we go to that person who's at the beginning, because I think you've mentioned even in some of the documents we're working on, data overwhelm, people just not even knowing where to start. But before we get there, I want to go again with this revenue per employee. That's huge. Every LinkedIn post I see is about, hey, I replaced my whole team with. So what do you mean not firing people? That's a hot take actually to say today.
Yeah, and I'm sure if we entered this into Gemini right now, I looked at it about a quarter ago, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and Netflix, and there was a few others. Last quarter, and I believe it was the end of 2024, so the first quarter of 2025, when they put out their S3s, I believe it was all 5 of them was the first time ever there was the most revenue per employee in the history of all 5 of those companies. So, and those are some people that are building the foundational models, the frontier models. So OpenAI inside of Microsoft and Google's building Gemini, and you got Facebook building their Llama. Those frontier models are obviously assisting the employees inside of those companies, creating more revenue for the employees that they currently have. And I also know in Amazon, every single employee at Amazon has a tool inside of there where there's a large language model that is an Amazon tool that allows them to do their day-to-day work and allows them to execute stuff and ask questions about internal documents that is not leaked to the public, but internal things that Amazon can save information into. So if you talk about those 5, 6 big companies, they're using this to demonstrate that you can get more revenue per employee if you use it correctly. The difference is not every CEO sees it like that. They look online and be like, oh, it'd be cool if I could get rid of Jill because Jill's annoying. And you're like, well, that's great. But also Jill serves a purpose, right? And that role is a purpose. Every company needs to have a customer service, department and a department that is actually communicating the way your IP is and your brand is and communicating the way that the procedures tell you to communicate. And since that department exists, you cannot fire the people from doing the hard thing, which is the human work. You just need to reduce their effort.
Because I saw that report about Microsoft, I think this past quarter had the highest earnings profitability, but they also mentioned something about laying off a certain percentage of the workforce. We can put up a screenshot of that here. So how do you interpret things like that as well?
Yeah, any of these events can be associated to any occurrence that's happening. And there's a lot of variables that happen when you go through layoffs. And when you focus on the AI aspect of it and you say Microsoft's laying off 70,000 people, AI is going to become the forefront. Well, that's the headline that you use to get more clicks. But is that truly the reason they laid those people off? Microsoft has laid hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of employees off all the time. They have grown, probably one of the most decorated stories of any company, to be the highest in the stock market S&P 500 for the longest period of time. Many companies die after 20 years. The S&P 500 20 years ago doesn't even have the same top 5 that we do now. So Microsoft has this decorated story of being in existence for a very long time. That also includes being really good at laying off at that scale. So is it associated to AI? I'm not positive, but you can write the headline to say that and then have people assume that AI is laying off jobs. The other thing that I would put up right next to that headline is that in Nigeria right now, the usage of ChatGPT is accelerating the students in those communities faster than it has ever done before. And it's teaching them English at an earlier age than it's ever done before.
Really?
So while Microsoft is laying off individuals because of AI, you're getting more valuable, I don't want to say like communities, but it's not that they're less valuable, it's that they're accelerating their educational paths in ways they could never accelerate it before because they didn't have access. So at the same time of losing 70,000 employees, you're creating 70,000 Nigerians that are now capable and able to use the same type of tools that somebody in Minnesota has, right? And that's an event. That's a storyline that you should put right next to the Microsoft one and say, 70,000 down here, 70,000 plus here. That's what AI can do to both sides of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen that because what I see is my nephew using ChatGPT when he's not supposed to, but I almost hope that we have more of that also in the US, people learning French with ChatGPT instead of just writing their homework. So that's inspiring. Let's talk a little bit about the beginning phase. So you talked about the people who are already implementing solutions and they might be doing it the wrong way. Tell me about the people who have that overwhelm, that FOMO. I've personally felt scared to go heads down on building certain solutions because every time I look up, there's a new solution. Like, okay, I was going all in on Cursor. Now there's Claude Code. I was going all in on this tech stack. And now there's a total new tech stack that I need to be on. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, we've talked about this week too, of automation tools. I mean, Cursor's dead, right? If you can switch to Claude Code that quickly, and like it's cheaper on Claude Code than it is on Cursor, and you can do it overnight, you don't have a moat. And I don't think Cursor ever had the moat because there was a wrapper of OpenAI just to do this coding tool, and it had a great layout and UI. You can steal UI, right? It's not something that is a moat that allowed Cursor to keep that UI forever. So Claude did something very smart. And what I think is appearing that people don't understand is there's 3 new operating systems. There's Claude, there's Gemini, and there's ChatGPT, OpenAI. Those are operating systems. Those are going to be foundational systems that when you ask a company, what are you on, Google or Microsoft, you're going to start asking people, what are you using, ChatGPT or Claude? Because the company's resources and knowledge base is going to be injected into that operating system to then inform the rest of the community or your employees or your customers information that the internet does not know. And that's important because your operating system is going to have to hide that from your competitors, but allow your customers and your employees to gain access to that information so that they can service them quicker with accurate results. And so we are choosing the new operating system. And all of these tools that were wrappers on top of ChatGPT, I mean, there's like 3 wrappers: sales enablement, productivity improvement, and then code assistance. If you bucket Y Combinator for the last 6 quarters or whenever they refresh their new Y Combinator group, they've all just focused and it says this for Cursor or Cursor for this, or it would say lawyers, Cursor for lawyers, Cursor for HVAC assistants. That was like 16 of the 250 that were there. They just said they were the Cursor of that. And I think those tools are just going to be eaten up by the operating systems as they learn more and code more, and those giant engineering teams start putting more into the operating system from the foundational model. What happens to us? Where do we go? The most important thing you can do is secure your data. I've been building for the last 3 months that every single app that I've ever used that is important to me, so my fitness app, my banking app, my Spotify playlist, things that are really important to me, I'm dumping into a Google Sheet. And the day that Gemini releases the personalization communication between my Google Drive and my phone, because I have an Android phone, I am very, very well set up to be able to ask, what was my fitness levels yesterday? I don't need to wait for the Fitbit integration, and I don't need to wait for that to actually happen. And even if it does, I'm not missing out because I have raw database data of every run, how much water I intake, how much I exercise, what my heart rate is every day, all of that into a database that is accessible from a large language model. And if I use Gemini or OpenAI, it doesn't matter. I give it Google Sheets that are populated every single minute of every day. Those are models that are never, those are like applications that are never going to be replaced. But the important thing is that's an application for me. And the world that AI creates are these personalization models that are for individual users to use so that they get the results that they're intended to do. It is not a SaaS play. It is not a build one model and hope 20 people join it. It is what is the best model for me to work. And that's, I think, the key difference of what you're seeing of products that are dying online compared to products that, for like myself, this will last forever.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So tell me more now about this data overwhelm and AI FOMO, how to, as a business owner, as a CEO, as an executive, how do I decide what to do? I can't even make my way. There's no practical plan of step one, step two. There's just hype and YouTube thumbnails.
Yeah, there's hype, but there's return on investment. If I told you you put $1 in the slot machine and get $2 out, you would do that as a business owner. It's like the Family Guy episode where Chris does that and he's like, Dad, this is my favorite game. There is no shame in being shy and asking, how do you get that to happen? And then you follow the right people that are building those solutions repetitively. And then you ask, I'm ready to do this. And you need to learn what is the proper way to step into this. But you need to be bashful enough or shy enough as a CEO to say, I don't fully understand how this is going to work, but I'm interested to see a small scenario or a small test case to see if it can work for my business. Because two things have to happen. The employees have to accept it and use it. That is super hard, and that has nothing to do with how good the AI is. It has everything to do with your culture, your communication of what's going to happen once this thing's installed, and their receptiveness to the product itself. If none of those three work and they're not receptive to it, they're going to squash it once it's released and not even use it, right? If you don't communicate that it's there to help them and not replace their jobs, of course they're not going to use it, right? But that is step one. Is as a CEO, you have to understand that there's this magical tool that you put $1 in, you get $2 out. It will work in your business. I promise that almost every business can use this today. You need to be bashful enough and shy enough to say, teach me how it can work for my business, and then listen and decide if it's right for you or not at the right time. The thing that most CEOs miss is they think, well, I get 20% profit right now. I don't need 25% profit or 30% profit. I'm good. I'm not going to enter into AI. And they also think, if I install it, the AI itself is going to maybe increase my revenue or decrease my costs, but it seems to be a lot of work for me to get there. I'm the president. I'm going to be out in 3 years. Let's just wait until then and see the next president can make the decision. What they forget about is that their competitors are using AI to lower the prices in their industry. And Harvey is the most beautiful use case. Start going into a law firm and look at a lawyer and say, if you're charging $1,000 an hour and you're doing, all of the research, all of the paralegal work it's being rolled up, all of that legal work is equating to 10 hours of work. What you really should be telling the lawyer is, instead of doing 10 hours of work, let's work on each client for 5 hours at $1,000 an hour and pick up a second client with that remaining 5 hours. That is a different outlook than just reducing cost. That's saying the client's going to be paying less. They're going to be paying 50% off for the same amount of work, so they're super happy. You're going to be doing 50% less work because ChatGPT is going to be enabling you to do more work, or your paralegals to give you more information at the same time. But the third scenario, the third aspect of this is that you're picking up another client with those remaining 5 hours to increase the part of the pie that your company has in the space in which you're competing. And if you can do that repetitively, and Harvey is very smart about doing this, because if you go after high ticket items, there's a zero-sum game of high ticket legal cases. If a law firm is charging half off on a $2 million law case, right? Like a legal case that's $2 million, and they're saying we'll do it for $1 million and we'll do it in half the time, of course they're going to win. They're not going to lose that competition. And so the next time the people that they're competing against they're going to realize they're going to have to start lowering their prices. But if they don't have AI in place, how are they going to compete? Right. And so that's the game that I think CEOs need to look at and start playing is once these prices drop or the speed increases, can I compete with that? And if the answer is no right now, you need to do something about it today.
Wow. What I'm hearing is humility. You said bashfulness and shyness. I hear humility to ask for help of experts and not to be willing to fall into the hype of just LinkedIn posts, YouTube posts, but actually going a step deeper to get an actual expert to come in and audit and say, hey, this is what I think you could do. And this is how you could go about doing it, and not relying solely on yourself. Because I think this is a quote that we put on our ads recently where it says, don't DIY your AI, hire an expert. Why do that though? Like there's so much education. It seems like I just talked to a CEO recently. He's like, oh, I've been generating ads with AI. Like it seems like there's so much accessibility. I have ChatGPT. I could create a custom GPT. I could do a little project or whatever. Why actually get an ML engineer or a product manager who's certified? Why have those conversations?
Yeah. So it's the same as like, can you build your own car at home by just eBaying all the pieces to your house? Of course you can. It's going to take a lot of time. You're going to end up buying a lot of different pieces, but you have to put it together yourself. And assembling a car, I imagine, is incredibly hard to make it work properly. And a car is a massive, endeavor that I'm comparing ChatGPT towards. But ChatGPT comes out of the box for everyone to use. It is a natural language model that has every single bits of information from the internet injected into it, including stuff you don't believe in. It also has stuff that can take your company and put it out of business. Coca-Cola could put an advertisement out that says how great Pepsi tastes, and that would destroy their business. No matter what, it would be negative press. We have our content writers purchased a Chevy truck for $1. That mistake cost at least $100,000 for that dealership, but the massive reputation and the technology that they built to get to the point where the chatbot was capable of allowing that to be purchased for $1 was probably completely destroyed. So let's say $1 million for the software, $100,000 for the car. Never mind the time and precious time from the C-suite to allow that to happen. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars wasted for the wrong decision because they didn't go in with the right consultancy or the idea that like ChatGPT can just solve this. ChatGPT is a guessing the next word model. And when it does that, it will guess the wrong word at a certain percentage of the time. When you hire an agency like 923, our job is between cost, latency, and accuracy. And you can ask us to be 100% accurate, right? And we will try our best. We'll get 99.9%. But the difference is we will create deterministic outputs and then know how many of those inputs create deterministic outputs. So maybe 70% of the time we know that it can go to this database, search up this information, return this result, and give that to the client, just like old school software engineering. And when you think of that, like the layer between ChatGPT and the prompt becomes engineering. It becomes a place that you QA, that you test, that you put through customers and make sure that you experiment and get the edge cases solved for. But when it fails, you're not trying to adjust the prompt and hope that it doesn't fail again. You're going to the actual engineering work, the router, and saying, why did you select this article for this request? And you're going to find that there's a clear path that we can see in the code and say, this article was selected for these 3 scenarios. And all we have to do now is adjust it to the 4th scenario that says, if, X, Y, and Z occurs, don't go to this specific article, go to article 17. And now we're actually working with the humans and creating edge cases and solving edge cases just like software engineering. We're not creating prompts or injecting information into prompts and hoping for the best. We're solving the problems at a very minute level per task or per agent, if you want to call it that. And then coming back with answers that are reliable and accurate. And sometimes they take a long time, but they don't mess up the brand. And I think that's the importance of adding the layer of a consultancy in between ChatGPT and the prompt.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense to me, actually. That's the first time it kind of clicked for me, is you're still using traditional engineering alongside AI, because there's certain times you don't want to give AI the option to come back with the wrong answer.
Yes. And there's certain times you want the large language model to say, hi, how you doing? How's your day going? And just chat. But there's also times where you want to say, hey, large language model, go write an SQL query on this giant, Snowflake database that has massive amounts of data and write the code and return the answer. And what we'll discover is either it writes the code correctly or it doesn't. It doesn't get the wrong answer. It wrote the wrong code to filter the query to get the answer. And we can check that. And we can say, next time when you write your code, just like an engineer, make sure you include these parameters. And now we're adding parameters, we're adding filters, we're adding guardrails, we're adding things to the code that says, when you query this massive database looking for this diamond in the rough, make sure you think of these things, because that's what the human would think about if they were to write the code in that query to get the information.
Awesome. There's really only three options that people have: get an external partner, do it in-house, or do an out-of-box tool, right? Or the fourth option, which we've all agreed is stupid, is doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
So tell me, you're not saying always get a vendor. Like, how do I know when I can just use Fathom or I can just use some out of the box tool versus when I should maybe get someone in-house? Maybe someone already has someone in-house and they need a partner to augment that team versus when, like, I just need to get a partner and I don't need anyone else. It'd be interesting to know those scenarios.
The minute you hire us, and if you're on a proposal with 5 agencies and you come to us, within the first half an hour of talking to 923, we're going to ask you one simple question. This problem that we're trying to solve, if we solve this, will this generate $200,000 of new revenue or reduce cost for you within the next 12 months? If they say no, we say, cool, let us know when it does and we'll talk to you then. Or here's a bunch of other agencies you can talk to that are a third the price of us. Because the whole importance of when you make that decision to use AI is that it's going to create a return on investment that is so great. It's like putting $1 into a slot machine and getting $2 out. That is the importance of going to an agency. And when you can prove that, you don't have the internal capacity to do a 3-month project that puts $1 into the slot machine and gets $2 out. And that's what you're paying us for. You're paying us to build an engine inside of a rocket that we're then going to teach you how to fly that rocket. And it's going to produce either more revenue or less cost for you in that time period so that your engineers can now use that or your marketing team can now use that and continue to see those savings year after year after year. If you chip away at that at your business, at every different department, you're eventually going to create a machine that is efficient, that is running at low cost, creating a high revenue. And that's where Microsoft and Facebook, just like we talked before, that's why they're seeing those returns, because they've been doing this for 4 years. Like, they're starting to see the results now from their inputs from 4 years ago. Amazon's large language model started internally in 2021. That's a long time to get a head start of how to internally talk to your information inside of Amazon to get the right answer on your own data.
Maybe can you also mention a smaller example? We've talked a lot about these not even enterprise, like some of the biggest companies in the world. Can you talk to me about some examples that aren't maybe billions, but millions?
One of the examples that I can give is there's a project we've been working on for the last 3 years, and it's in the consulting space. And they were doing $500,000 of revenue when they came to us. And they asked, can we build this engine that reads documents and understands information from those documents to put it into a final report? And typically the consultants that they hired, it would cost them like $300,000-$400,000 to hire these consultants throughout the year to read these documents, understand what's in there. And it would take, I think it was 40 hours per document to produce this report out of that document that they'd send to legal. And so we looked at the problem and we said, yeah, this is about $150,000, $200,000 problem. $500,000 business looks at a $200,000 problem and is like, that's half my yearly salary. But he was so forward thinking, he said, sure, let's do that. And what's the result? He's now doing $850,000 of revenue with less than $200,000 of cost. And what changed is that people that were hired to do, they were consultants, right? He was going through a lot of consultants to do the actual tasks. But when he actually looked at his employees and said, hey, these employees are the key employees in the business, they could do all the work. They didn't need the consultants. They just looked at the full-time people and said, you can review these paperwork instead of doing 40 hours. Let's review it for 20 hours, maybe 10. The AI will do the rest, and we'll look at more reports per employee. Now they're doing $850,000, and it's just been a year. So if this trend continues, they're going to go to $1 million with $300,000 of cost, and then maybe $2 million with $350,000 of cost. That margin starts increasing. The cost doesn't grow as quickly as the revenue because the AI is taking care of that gap that used to needed to be hired by consultants and needed to be filled by consultants because it's time and they were getting paid on their time. But now it's a great win for them and a great win for us because we've been in contact with them for the last year now.
That's awesome. So in summary, like a one sentence version of how to know what direction I need to go. So you said 200K, if specifically for 923, if your solution cannot create either 200K in cost savings or increased revenue, then it doesn't make sense for you to partner with us.
That's right.
But then how do I know which direction I should go?
Yeah, I mean, get a bigger business is one. The second one is marketing tools and automations is probably the way to dip your toe in the water. There is a lot of ways that you can spread your message online using some of the tools that have been created on top of ChatGPT since the creation. So there's a lot of video editing tools. There's a lot of HubSpot automations. There's a lot of email workflow tools. I mean, I just did a LinkedIn post. I think I was getting 20 to 30 spams a month back in 2023. And this month I had over 1,500. So that means that there's a lot of people sending spammy emails, which means you can jump on that bandwagon and send them out because they still work. But like my point is, marketing is a great place to start. There's a lot of AI tools there. There's a lot of productivity solutions. And you start realizing what works and what doesn't work for you and how it works. Maybe it still hallucinates and you don't like that, but it gives you the ability to start at a smaller scale. If you're larger and you're $1 billion company, there is a department that is looking for efficiencies. And it's shocking to hear, but I've looked at McKinsey and Accenture's deal flow, and they have a lot of reviews in there, and sometimes they even put the pricing, which is ridiculous. But if you use ChatGPT on or deep research, you can find them, and you source correct. So I have validated with the source, and so there's like reviews in there, and it's like Microsoft director of whatever used Accenture to solve this problem in their company. $1,000 project led to 3x ROI, whatever it is. And they have these reviews, these chunked. So even the departments only have capacity to spend $50, $60, $100,000. And that's just the budget they have, right? The larger you go as a company, there's still smaller problems that need to be solved. And so I think $200,000 is still a really good sweet spot because a department needs us, a big company needs us, or a startup that's a funded startup that gives them the ability to leverage against their competition.
Yeah, and that's usually trickled out over across time. So even if you're interested and you only have, let's say, I think it's 30 grand to say, hey, okay, let me just come do a discovery session, figure out what I need, and then walk away with maybe not your first production release of it, but at least a tangible artifact of what you can go execute at scale.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Awesome. The last question I had was around what we call the AI prioritization index. So there's so many options of what to build. I've now followed Andrew's framework. I know that I have 200K in savings that could happen or revenue increase. I have a list of things that could get that return. How do I know which one to pick from that list to say, okay, 923, whoever, build this thing for me?
The answer is I've worked in manufacturing where you swear at everybody all day long. I've worked on nuclear submarines where you're working with the government and making really hard decisions all the time. And I've worked on supply chains all around the world. The answer is always work with your employees that the AI is going to be like assisting, and ask them where their days are boring and mundane. Because if you replace the creative part of their day, they're going to hate you because you hired them to be creative and do the stuff that AI is still guessing at. If you ask those employees, what's the part of your day you don't want to do? And you do the elevate and delegate, and you put them in the bottom grid, and you say, these are the tasks that I wish I never had to do at this company. And you use AI to solve that, you're going to get buy-in, you're going to get employee advocacy, you're going to get better retention scores. You're not going to have people mad at you for deciding to use AI. Like it is always the answer to figure out, to go down into your company, to ask the teammates and say, what would you do? Because if you choose as a CEO that we're going to replace this thingy and you don't tell the rest, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to see the results, and it's dangerous to watch what happens to the culture. And so I think we have to consider that AI is human first and AI assisted, at least for now, until I love the new framework of how long is the leash of AI? Like like a toddler, right? Like a toddler, you have to watch all the time and you can't let them do anything. AI is past that standpoint. It's maybe like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old where like You can be at the park and it can go on a swing for a little bit, but it'll climb up on the ladder and then jump off and try to do Superman. Right? Like, that's where we're at with AI. And so since you have to monitor it, you still can't let it loose. And as a CEO, you want to make sure the employees are watching it and guiding it and controlling it and managing it. You can't be there when it wants to climb up on the ladder and jump. So the decision, I truly believe, is talk to your employees and ask them.
Okay, so let's go to the smaller department of 1 or 5. And they're all like, yeah, we just want to do whatever makes the most money because we want the highest ROI thing. Or even going to someone like you mentioned earlier. Hey, they're a pretty small team. They don't have a bunch of employees. They can't rely on their perspective. How do they decide that?
Yeah, so I mean, a department of 1 is not a system, and everything needs to be part of a system and part of the engine, right? And so when you ask for AI tools or helps or assistance or like things to do in a department, the engine has to be built in a way that is a system, that there's inputs and outputs that are predicted and guided and controlled. And AI can then enable that or enhance that. Until you have the system in place, the AI needs to be the, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Like the accelerator, but like the amplifier. You want AI to amplify the results that were happening before. So if you're putting out 3 pages of marketing content and all of a sudden AI can put out 6, is the quality still intact? Are the checkpoints still there that the people are reading it for the same amount of time? Is the time on page the same? Because if you don't even have those in place, you're just putting out, like Nishan, you always tell me, you're putting out crap content for no reason at all because you were told to put out 5 a day. And then all of a sudden, no one's reading it anyway. So the engine has to be built first, and AI should be an amplifier or an assistant to that thing that AI is supposed to assist. And then, yeah, you start there.
Okay. And then I think you might have mentioned this before, but you said either cost savings or revenue generation. So I think it's pretty clear what departments or systems, you said machines, are on what side of that equation. I know I'm pushing a little bit here, but how do I choose? I have all these different machines now. Mm-hmm. How do I choose which one to go accelerate first?
Yeah, so there's the theory of constraints, which is this concept of how in a manufacturing or supply chain, you're going to have parts of your system that create a bottleneck for the rest of the systems. And typically with software, it's always been engineering. Engineering has been the longest pole because it takes a very long time to code a product. And so the thought process is like, if I can put these people around engineers to help them with planning, to help them with ticket creation, to help them with QA, to help them with, deployment, all of those other jobs were created to help the bottleneck, which is engineering, which is the people actually doing the code. And we're starting to get to a place where the engineers are becoming faster and more elegant. So you're reducing that bottleneck. As a CEO, it's the same decision you're making inside of your AI, workforce. If I put an AI tool at station 2 and I relieve the bottleneck and I all of a sudden create 100 widgets per hour at that bottleneck, sales is going to be like, whoa. I can only sell 10 an hour. It's cool that you can produce 100 an hour. Great job, team. But I only got 10 for you today. So what does the team do for the rest of the time? They sit on their hands for the next few hours. And I love the example that we just kind of documented in our LinkedIn is there was this engineer, Jill, that created drawings in engineering, especially hard engineering, bridges or cars or trucks. We create these drawings that have a lot of federal regulations to them or ASME stamps and certifications, and they have to be approved. And there's reasons why, tolerance stacks up is a big problem, or machining tools are all of these reasons that drawings have to be very specific. And if an engineer in that department said, cool, I just created, instead of doing it for 40 hours, I can do it for 5, she sped up the ability for the drawing department to get drawings out faster. But if the manufacturing can't produce it as fast as her team can put out drawings, you've created a bottleneck in manufacturing, and Jill and her team have nothing to do. So as a CEO, you have to think, where is the point in my business that if I relieve this bottleneck, it's going to create those increased revenues or decreased costs? And I think that's what consultancy is for. The Bobs that come into your office, they seem ridiculous, but they see the whole picture. And so when you raise your hand, we've been in scenarios with a wheel company where they're like, I want an app to sell more wheels. And we're like, no. You need to tell your sales team what the information is of the wheel more frequently so they can be on 1 call instead of 3. That will speed up the sales calls, and then your customers will get more wheels. Once your customers getting more wheels, then you can start putting the app together, right? It's just the thought process of looking at the whole picture and deciding, where in the supply chain does AI provide the biggest return on investment and biggest bang for your buck? And if you do that, who on the other side of it is going to feel the pain? If the answer is your customers are just going to be inundated with more results, cool, do it. But if the answer is like sales is going to have to pick up the slack and you got to hire 15 people to keep up with the new throughput, you're in trouble.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And its success is an asymptote, right? So after you've removed that first bottleneck, all right, you go to the next one. And I love what you said about bringing a consultant in because it connects to something you mentioned earlier with specialized versus generalized knowledge. ChatGPT is very general, but if you bring in a consultant who can understand your domain, we're talking about now as a company getting HIPAA compliant, working with FDA approved products, things like this that are very domain specific. Now you're in a position where you can have someone recommend a solution that you wouldn't have gotten from ChatGPT.
Exactly right. ChatGPT knows about the past. The future still needs to be decided by humans.
Yeah. And even you mentioned earlier, the long prompt, like, oh, it didn't get the right result. Let me write a better prompt.
Yeah.
You're still, what's it called? Praying and spraying and praying.
Yes.
Like you spray another prompt in and just pray that it doesn't hallucinate. But when you actually work with someone who has PhD level engineers and traditional software engineering combined with machine learning and generative AI, you can end up with something that has a higher probability of being right.
Yes, exactly right.
Beautiful. Sweet. All right. So this is the end of episode 1 of this series. If you like this, then you would like this video as well, where we go into how you can use AI content. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks all. Thanks, Nishan.